of Michigan, if you heard it. It's a big university in America. But then, unlike you, I dropped out of school to become a monk, and I was a monk for 12 years, a brahmachari. And then I met my future wife, and that was the end of being a monk. And my wife was not American, she's from Ireland. And so then right after we got married, we moved to India. And we lived there for 21 years in UP, in Vrindavan. And my wife was running, she was a school principal in ICSE school, you know ICSE? Yeah, an ICSE school. And I was running an adult education program. But then I got in something called the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education. And then I got into conflict resolution. And so I went back to school at college, but I didn't have a bachelor's degree, but I still got accepted in an MA program because my mentor is a big professor at MIT, and so she contacted the university and they said, okay, we'll make an exception. So I got a degree in conflict resolution, and then I started, in India, I started working for the Supreme Court. My job was to train the judges in the Supreme Court and in high courts all around India in conflict, settling cases outside of court, like that. And then after 21 years there, we moved back to America. My wife is the president of the temple in Washington, D.C. And I started working for the U.S. government. And so I work for NASA. Have you heard of them? They make the rockets that go up in space. Yeah. I don't know anything about rockets, but I know a lot about human beings. So there's a lot of conflicts in NASA because, with all due respect to any of the engineers in the room, engineers like to fight with each other about their ideas. So engineers and scientists. So I do that now just as a consultant. I'm 67 years old. I'm semi-retired, but I do that with 2 other organizations. And I also, in the Krishna organization, I started a conflict resolution program. So that's a little bit about me. My son was born and raised in India, so he speaks Pakka Hindi and Brijbas, and he's married to a Gujar. The funny thing is he's married to a very nice young lady from Gujarat, but she was born and raised in the UK. So my son doesn't look Indian, right? But he's 100% Indian. She looks Indian, but she's 100% UK Wali. So she knows a little Gujarati, but she doesn't know any Hindi. So when they go shopping in Delhi, the shopkeepers speak to her in Hindi, but then he replies. Okay, so welcome. Okay, so I thought I was asked what to speak about, and this was a presentation I made at MIT one time. And so I thought, since you're as brilliant as the MIT fellows, we would present it here. And it's something, I'm sure you've read about it, and you've probably even experienced it, but it's still good to remind ourselves about being in the present. And we'll talk about that, okay? This is very informal, so anytime you have a question, a comment, you disagree, whatever, no problem. This is not a boring lecture. I'm sure our professor here does not give boring lectures. I've heard he gives very good lectures. But I'm sure you've been to some really boring lectures. So I'm not going to do that. Next slide.
Yes.
Okay. So, which one are we, mindful or mindful? Next. Yeah, so this is the definition of mindfulness. It means paying attention in a very particular way, on purpose, in the present, and non-judgmentally, right? We'll talk about all of these 3 in a minute, but it's the idea of using the mind to be very focused. It's not always focused, and if it is, it's often judgmental. I like this, I don't like that. I like this, I don't like that. Just like where's Gujarati? I like dal dokali. I don't like Loki sabji. Don't like Loki for some reason. But non-judgmental is being more like neutral about things. Next. So, be mindful. Go ahead. Next one. Yeah. Okay, next slide. So there's many benefits. This is from the American Psychological Society, Psychiatry Association of, what is it, APA? Anyone, you can Google it, I forget the acronym. Go ahead, next. So, when we're focused, when our mind doesn't go in so many different places, and the Bhagavad Gita says, Chanchala hi mana Krishna. Anyone know what the word chanchala means?
Wavering.
Yes, wavering. It's going all over the place, right? And it's so easy now when you have a cell phone, when you have a smartphone, you can go all over the planet. Can you imagine when I went to university, there was no cell phones, there were no computers. And I went to 1976. We had the big technology, we had electric typewriters. That was like considered amazing. So yes, not ruminating about so many things. Next. And it's much less stressful. I know university students, so forgive me, because my son, now he's 34, but he has an undergrad and graduate degree. And most university students, right, they're doing their work, they're usually listening to some music also, right? And then some of their friends are texting them, right? And then they may be going back and forth, between the work they're doing and something on YouTube. All the same, right? Nothing is that, right? But it's, so much research shows that that's not the smartest thing to do. And we'll get in a few minutes to what the Bhagavad Gita says about all of that, right? But it's really stress-producing often to just be in this hyperactive state, be focused. Imagine, the great sages of the past, right? They were able to fix their mind like a laser instead of being, in the Gita, Krishna uses the word bahu sakha, that the mind is, bahu means many and sakha means like a branch of a tree, so it's like many branched. And Krishna tells Arjuna, no, vyavasayat nikabhutir ekeha. Ekeha means eka, right? Eka, like one-minded. So it's a very, welcome. You missed the whole thing. Do you have any questions? No, that was a joke. Please. Okay, next. Yeah, it's much better for memory, right? I know it's really important for me at 67 years old to be very protective of my memory, right, as you get older. And I find that when I'm focused, my memory is much sharper than when I'm all over the place. Next. Focus, yeah, okay. Oh yeah, when we are fixed in what we're doing, it's just like, I'm sure you've all had this experience where things are going really well, right? You're getting enough sleep, you're eating well, you're not staying up until 3 in the morning studying, but your studying is going well, your relationship with your parents and with friends is going well, things are just, there's green lights everywhere, right? Then when you're in that state of mind and you meet someone or even something comes up in the news that doesn't strike you as very happy, you can just kind of like, it's okay. But when you're kind of stressed out, even burnt out, you're burnt, what do they say, burning the candle at both ends, right? And you're not getting enough sleep, and you're eating junk food a lot, then the same thing or the same person, you can be very abrasive. You can be very unkind to them. So the emotional reactivity is much less, or at least, much less in the negative sense when we're practicing mindfulness. Okay? And you can really understand and relate to other people's sufferings. The Bhagavad Gita also talks about that the great sage appreciates the difficulties and suffering of others. You know the difference between sympathy and empathy? You want to define it?
Empathy is more like you feel for them. You understand their feelings and feel for them is empathy.
Yeah.
Sympathy it's like just feeling for them, but you don't put in their position.
Very good. Genius. Yeah, I told you guys are all smart. Yeah. A good example of of empathy. Can I borrow your adjustment, your glasses? Yeah. So empathy means I stop trying to see the world the way I see it, and I start seeing it the way he sees it. He's really trying to, thank you, really trying to walk in his footsteps and setting aside my way of seeing the world. And one can do that when one is more shanti, more peaceful, more focused, practicing mindfulness. And we can be much more compassionate, much more caring about others, because our cup is full, and therefore it's much easier to help others. When we're feeling drained, it's really hard to think of other people's welfare. And you know, Bhagavad Gita is all about compassion, all about caring for other people. Okay, and etc. That covers everything else. All right, next slide. All right, so let's talk about some ancient wisdom on the Gita. Next. So, you know, the Gita talks about three kinds of energies in this world, right? And what are they?
Rajo, Tamas,
Sattva is the first one, Rajas and Tamas. Yeah, right? And these are, according to the Gita, they're almost like all pervasive. Right? It's almost, you know, we're so affected by them, it's kind of like a fish never thinks they're surrounded by water. Right? It's just, so we're so affected by the different modes of material nature that we don't even kind of recognize it. But so let's talk about it a little bit here. Next. So sattva means being really present. Go ahead. And when we're sattvic, we create a distance between us and our thoughts. You can actually almost like go up in a helicopter or the balcony, and you can look at what you're thinking. And this is a very spiritual thing to do, because we're actually the soul, we're not the body, and we're not the mind ultimately. So when you observe your mind, the question is, who's the observer? Right? Because usually we very much kind of connect mind and soul, you know, we think it's all one. I am my mind. But when we start observing our mind, it's actually a very, very spiritual practice to do that. So sattva, the mode of goodness, gives us that ability to do that. Yes, and this is a huge thing, right? Can you imagine if we can observe our thoughts, and instead of completely identify with them, choose which thoughts we think are actually good for us and which ones we don't want to think about. Because usually we just, whatever our mind tells us, you know, Dasos me, I serve whatever my mind says. But a spiritual practice is to not be a servant. The mind is a great servant and a bad master. When it's running our life, watch out world, right? But when it's following our dictates, and we can choose which parts of our mind or which things that come into our mind we like, and which things we're going to like, say, cello, then the mind can. So Krishna says this in the Gita, Udaret Atmanapanam, Atmanam Avasadayat, Atmaiva Hyatmano Bandur. What does Bandur mean? Bandur? Friend, right? Atmaiva Viparatmana. And Vipara, anyone know? Means enemy. So mind can be your friend or your enemy. And this is right in the 6th chapter of the Gita. Right? Okay, next. So sattva gives us the freedom of choice to choose which thoughts we want to accept or not. We don't just, you know, whatever I'm thinking, all right, that's me. It's very, very, so sattva, let's just, I don't know, I was telling the story this morning to another, I was at a program, and the person was supposed to give me a ride, right? And then he couldn't, so someone else volunteered, but they said, give me 15 minutes. And I said, okay. But I realized later why he needed 15 minutes. He had to clean his car first, right? So sattva can be, you know, keeping our car clean, keeping our room clean, keeping our desk clean, keeping our mind clean. There's a lot of things that, very practical things that we can do to be sattvic. right? Taking bath regularly, having clean clothes, and the kind of clothes that we wear, even, things like that. But cotton is a lot more sattvic than polyester, by the way. You ever notice that? You actually feel much better, don't you, when you're wearing something 100% that's 100% cotton? Yeah. And so, like we've already kind of said, everything that happens to us, there's a stimulus, something happens to us, and then we respond. And the Gita says to put a pause between those two and think of how we want to respond. So Gita suggests we respond in a sattvic way, right? Even to our enemies, our so-called enemies. My guru, Srila Prabhupada, he once said, "Do not be upset at the agent of your karma." Isn't that interesting? So someone's giving you a hard time, right? And what he's kind of saying is that it's like they're giving you your karma on a silver platter. Please take. Okay? So don't be upset at the agent of your karma. That's a very sattvic kind of thought. Because usually we think, this person's out to get me, okay, and then how am I going to get revenge? What am I going to do? And he said, don't be upset at the agent of your karma. Interesting. Yeah? Any thoughts so far? Please remember, questions, comments, anything. I don't want this to be just like a lecture. You get enough lectures at this university, I'm sure. Right? So anytime, please, let's keep this informal. And I hope I don't talk too fast. I'm from New York. So, people in America talk fast, and people in New York talk twice as fast as other Americans. Okay, so just let me know if I'm. Okay, Rajas, mode of passion, next. So it's when we think about the future. In an unhealthy way. Of course, planning your future, that makes sense. I might plan my retirement or something like that. But it's like, what's that saying? Mark Twain once said, many terrible things have happened to me, but luckily none of them ever took place. Right? Is anyone here a worrier? Right? Sometimes we worry about things. We worry about an exam, perhaps, or there's so many things we can worry about. So I think we probably all have the experience that many things we worry about, it was a waste of time. They didn't happen. Some of them, but most of them don't. So the mode of passion kind of forces us to start thinking about the future, worrying about it. Again, that's different than planning. It's good to have a plan. Like, some of these young ladies here are studying AI. So, they may have a plan what they're going to do with that degree after they graduate, right? Of course, what's that saying? If you want to make God laugh, make a plan. Okay? But still, my point is planning is different than worrying and getting all caught up in our head about the future. You see the difference? Okay, next. Yes, and when we get the mode of passion, Rajas takes our mind away from being. You ever read a page of a book and you read it, each word, and you don't remember one word on that page? Does anyone have that happen? Yeah, yes. Usually that means the mind is just gone somewhere else. Unnecessary planning. Next. And worrying about what might happen and what might take place. Yeah, so all that. Anyone ever have this mode of passion affect your mind? Yeah? It's not just me. Okay? All right, now let's talk about even worse, ignorance. Oh, yeah, there's the Mark Twain.
Okay, when you say unnecessary planning, when you have a future.
So the key word here is unnecessary. Yeah, necessary planning, no problem. No problem at all. But unnecessary planning, right? Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a quote. There's the exact quote. I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. The famous writer. Okay, let's talk about ignorance. Next. Whoa, it all came at once. This is when you lament about the past. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? You ever done that? You meet somebody, oh, I wish I had said this. Right? Yeah? Or something like that, or, oh, darn, I wish I hadn't done that. So, it's lamenting. That's the English word, lamenting about the past. There's coulda, shoulda, woulda. You can't take back what is done. This is different than learning from our mistakes. There's that saying, it's fine, it's okay to make mistakes. Just don't make the same mistake twice. That's the basic idea. Matter of fact, I was telling them this morning in another program, in NASA, and even with devotees and in a few other places where I'm a consultant, we sometimes have failure festivals. Right? Because I work with a couple of groups that are entrepreneurs, right? So bring everyone together and everyone talk about what mistakes they made. And there's no judgment, there's nothing like that. And it's so much fun, first of all, and it's such a relief. And then of course I'm facilitating it and I ask them, well, what did you learn from that mistake? Right? And that really helps. In NASA, of course, NASA started, so my program is on, have you ever heard the term ombudsman? It's on the ombudsman for NASA. And what that means is people can come and talk to me about anything, it's totally confidential. And I just help them work through conflicts they have, problems they have. And the reason it started was the Columbia disaster, the one that blew up 13 seconds after takeoff. I was there, I saw it. Because there was a junior engineer who knew about the problem, but he didn't speak up because the senior engineers were like, God, and they were really pushing for the takeoff to happen as quickly as possible. So that's why they started this program, the Ombuds program at NASA, by the way. So it's okay to that learning from our mistakes is different than constantly going, beating ourselves up. Does anyone beat themselves up? Don't raise your hand. There's a difference between guilt and shame. You've heard this distinction? It's an important distinction. Guilt is I made a mistake. Shame is I am a mistake. In other words, just thinking everything about me is bad because I did X, Y, or Z, right? And it's really, shame leads to all kinds of psychological problems and depression and this and that. Guilt can actually be healthy if we just, okay, I made this mistake. It doesn't define who I am, and I'm going to fix it. One time, my guru, Prabhupada, he had a secretary, and in those days, Prabhupada, he would dictate letters. And so then the secretary would type it up, and there was supposed to be an enclosure in the letter. Remember when there was actually letters? No, you probably don't remember. But anyway, so the secretary forgot to put the enclosure in. Okay? And so Prabhupada said to him, so what are you going to do? And he said, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so sorry, I'm a terrible secretary. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm so this, I'm so. What are you going to do? Okay, I'll write another letter to that person, apologize for getting the enclosure, and I'll put the enclosure in. And Prabhupada said, fine. And then he forgot about it. So you made a mistake, you fixed it. Cut down hope you, right? It's finished. It's over. Don't worry about it anymore. So ignorance, the past, passion, the future, sattva, the present. Okay? Got it so far? Any questions, comments? Yes?
Prabhuji, especially for students, going back to the mode of sattva and rajas,
Yeah.
like if the young people want to achieve or they are very ambitious, should they be somewhat in the mode of
Passion?
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Prabhupada's guru once made a joke, and he said, "I'm praying for the day my disciples rise to the mode of passion," meaning that they're in ignorance. You can be sattvic and ambitious at the same time. You just won't. There's one thing when you're trying to be. Passion would usually push other people down so that you can go up. Goodness is you just go up without, and you encourage others to also do well. See the difference? Right. It's kind of like one time I was brought into an organization, and I was asked to analyze it because there wasn't a very nice mood in the office, right? And I saw that they had this competition that whoever did the most, they manufacture things. So whoever did the most got a big bonus. And I noticed that it didn't. It created a really negative mood because other people were upset when someone else did well, right? So I went to the CEO and I said, let's change that. Would you be willing to make an experiment? Next year, let's set a very, very high goal, something that would really bring a lot of profits. And if the team met that goal, they would all get a bonus. And he agreed to that. And that changed the whole atmosphere. Everyone was encouraging each other. They were happy when someone did well, and they actually achieved the goal. Yeah. So that's a more sattvic thing, and the other competition was a little bit more rajasic. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's okay, and then if you really have a spiritual ambitions in life, then, and this is so interesting that this example came from great sadhus. When you think about it, okay, so the example is that a woman who is married but has a lover on the side. Okay, so the sadhu is telling the story. So she does, and so, and of course this is in a time when women were primarily, this story, this was told in the 1930s. Women, their main duty was in the home in those days. Not all AI lollies. So, this is Prabhupada's guru told the story. But the woman does her household affairs even better than usual, so that the husband doesn't have any suspicion. But she's always thinking about being with her lover. So then, Prabhupada's guru says, so the moral of the story, or the example is there, that the follower of Krishna's can do the most amazing things in this world, even better than people who aren't interested in bhakti. So that's like, doing the household chores better, but always thinking of doing things for the pleasure of Krishna. So you see, so a very interesting example, isn't it? From about 100 years ago, actually. Yeah. Anything else so far? How are we doing time-wise? We go until 10 o'clock tonight? 11? No. 8 o'clock, right? Yeah. Gotcha. All right, next.
Yes.
So, it's very interesting because, mindfulness has become like a big thing. Even Fortune 500 companies, they have retreats, mindfulness retreats, and Buddhism is big on mindfulness, and anything New Age-ish. Very, it's a key word. They'll have retreats where they give you a raisin or a date or a fig, and take at least 5 minutes to eat it, and be totally fixed, and focus on the texture of the date and the taste, and really try to be it's kind of a practice on. But the interesting thing is, Krishna talked about it thousands of years ago. So he talked about being self-satisfied, but this is the key word: na soshati, na kanchati. Don't hanker or lament. right? So remember, hankering, rajas, lamenting, tamas. Right? So this is like from the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmabhuta prasanatma masojatina. Next. And Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote this. When did he write? I think in the early 1800s. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. That means whatever's happened in the past. Act in the living present. Heart within and God overhead. And then next slide. There should be one before that, no?
Yes.
No? You didn't skip one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. One of
Go back.
yeah, there we go.
Oh, this.
Yes, thank you. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a great Vaishnava writer. He was an amazing person. He lived during the Raj, during the British rule, and he was a magistrate in the Puri in Orissa, and that was like a full-time job. Plus, he had 14 children, and he wrote 100 books. Talk about like good time management. That's like, that's next level time management, right? So he wrote this: forget the past that sleeps. That's don't lament. Nor never in the future dream at all, but be in times that are with thee, and progress ye shall call. Yes.
This is a question regarding the mode of passion and goodness.
Yes.
Doesn't it depend on the reason behind we are like the task we are doing? For example, during the war, Krishna was, I would say, it was in mode of passion because he wanted to win at any cost because he thought that was the right thing. And if in that case he was in the mode of goodness, I don't think that would have been possible.
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. It's interesting, right? Because the Bhagavad Gita is spoken on a battlefield, right? It's just before Kurukshetra. And all of these points, the word sattva is mentioned something, I can't remember how many times, many times. And the word ahimsa is mentioned 9 times. And there's one other word. Anyway, ahimsa means nonviolence. So they're out on the battlefield, right? Oh, Shanti. Shanti is mentioned 7 times. Right? Shanti means peace, right? There's a verse, chapter 5, verse 29, which is like the peace formula. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram. Suridam sarvabhutanam gyatpamam shantim, there's that word, richati. So he talks about Shanti, he talks about ahimsa, and then he says, Arjuna, fight. What? So he was, and he definitely encourages the mode of goodness, right? So it seems that one can do even one can be very, very active in this world. That was also like your question. We can be very active in this world. In other words, for example, give my example. Can you get a lot of stuff done in this world and really be ambitious and still keep your room clean? Right? Is there any problem with that? Or eat food that is good for your health? Or get enough sleep? Right? So you can do things that are very sattvic and still, matter of fact, I would argue that you can get a lot more done in sattva. Right? Because rajas often burns out after a while. Even when I went to college, I went back to college 27 years after I dropped out. So it was interesting. So I was in my 40s and I was still sometimes, not doing all-nighters, but sometimes I was staying up pretty late. It was all, it wasn't exams, it was writing papers, for the social science. But I could see sometimes when the mode of passion got that, I would make so many mistakes. Luckily, there's spell checks and all that sort of stuff, right? And now there's what is it called? Grammarly, right? It tells you, yeah. So does that answer? I think it's possible to be very ambitious, to get tons achieved in this world and still be sattvic. Is that right? And thank you, great question. Anything else? Yes?
Probably, there are conflicts that are going in front of us
Really?
many a times.
Always?
But then there are conflicts that are going on inside our head all the time.
Yes.
So, even if we try to separate it out and analyze it, but it becomes over-analysis and it leads to paralysis.
Paralysis by analysis.
So I'm not able to really understand how to really cater to this kind of mess that happens in my head.
Yes, so there's 8 material elements, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. This is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. And then there's mind, intelligence, and ego, false ego, right? And Krishna calls these bina prakriti. Bina means separated material elements. And then he says, apariyasi tasvangyam prakritim vidimepram, that and then there's the soul, who we actually are. It's not that we have a soul, we are the soul. Right. And yeah, the mind, and we quoted already, the mind being your friend or enemy. And one of the enemy things about the mind is this rumination, and paralysis by analysis, just going back and forth, and it can happen sometimes. If you meet a girl or a girl meets a guy, I shouldn't have said that. No, why did I say it? Oh, he's never going to call me again. All these things, right? And go crazy like that. So, that's ignorance and passion affecting us. So, recommendation is do things that are sattvic. Like, does anyone have a good thing you do when you're stressed or fearful or in anxiety? Is there something that works for you?
Exercise, chocolate.
What's that?
Eat chocolate.
Eat chocolate. Okay, yeah. No, a lot of people take shelter of food and chocolate. Okay, yeah. Dark chocolate's better for you, by the way. Sleep? Yeah, sometimes just sleep. Go for a walk. Now that's very sattvic, even more than chocolate.
Think of God.
Think of God. That's always that's not sattvic. That's called Suddha Sattva. That's transcendental.
No.
Yeah. No, seriously. That's or chant or read the Bhagavad Gita or something like that. Yeah.
Spiritual music.
Spiritual music. Yes. What kind of spiritual music do you like?
Spiritual, any kind of like Hindi, spiritual bhajan kirtan.
Bhajan kirtan. Okay, very good. Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Janava Harrison? You can Google her. She's a beautiful voice and has some really nice, amazing bhajans. Yeah, it's good to know what works for us, right? Some people go shopping. Right? When the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. Right? Or eating. I'm not saying chocolate's not so bad. Junk food, potato chips, Doritos, whatever is your whatever is your vice, so to speak, or just YouTube, Netflix, whatever it is, right? Just binge watch some stuff, right? Yeah. So it's good to know what is more sattvic, and see if you can do that. One very good thing that Shastra recommends is pranayama. Doing pranayama, it really cools down the mind. Doing pranayama, doing some yoga, walking. Actually, it says that exercise for a yogi is walking. In the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, don't eat too much, don't eat too little, don't sleep too much, and one who is temperate in their habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can practice really first-class yoga. And then in the the commentary says that for yogi, walking is walking. Of course, if you like to run at your age, that's great. At my age, it's a little trickier. Yeah. Okay, shall we carry on? All right, next. Okay, so there's a perfect multitasking, shaving, drinking coffee, and everything else. Go ahead. So, do we check our phones often? Anyone do that? No one does that here. Nice. Oh yeah. Okay. You can somebody can Google it. What is the average, high school or college student? How often do they check their phone per day? Do we do more than one cognitive task at the same time? See, it's okay. Multitasking is not so bad if one of the tasks is not cognitive, right? Like if you're ironing clothes, you kind of know how to do that, right? And it doesn't take a lot of your mental energy, but it's challenging even listening to music sometimes, because if there's lyrics, then the lyrics kind of and so do we ever do that? I think a lot of us do that if we were honest. Do we fall asleep or our mind wanders while reading? Right, so mind wandering, passion, falling asleep, ignorance. Okay. Do we walk or drive and text at the same time? I was in South Korea recently. I've been doing a whole kind of tour. I was in five cities in Australia, then I went to Bali, Jakarta, Seoul, Singapore, and then Monday I go to Manila. And in Seoul, everyone is on a phone. Constantly it's incredible. It's incredible. And they're all Samsung. Because Samsung is made in Korea. Yeah. But this can be dangerous also, right? Or are we hooked on the urgency addiction? Urgency addiction is just that kind of high you get from, you put stuff, anyone ever do this? You put things off, and then you do a big marathon to get, right, if you have to write a paper or prepare for it, and you put it off, and then, and it's not the natural way things are done, right? The natural way things are done is like on a farm. Could you imagine a farmer saying, sleeping and reading books and doing that, and then doing a big marathon at the end? And that, so to run a farm, you have to plow the field, you have to sow the whatever you're putting in the earth, and you have to water it, and it takes months. You can't just do it all at the end. Right? You think I'm gonna do the planting and the harvesting all in 5 days. It doesn't work. It's not natural. So this is also can be kind of unnatural. So this, I assume you can relate to some of these bullet points. Or all of them. Okay, next. Okay, so here's some practical solutions. Okay. It's sometimes helpful to have some kind of tool that works for you. It can be analog if it's a little book that fits in your pocket or something, or on your phone, and I don't know so much about. I became kind of hooked on Apple, right? So I have Apple Notes and Apple this and Apple that. But you may have whatever you have on your Android, But find a place that it's really to have a place that you're actually going to use and you're actually going to look at it later, right? So that you can say, oh yes, I forgot to do this. You put it on your phone, for example, and then you get back to what's really happening in life. Block time is an interesting thing. Some people, this is especially when I'm doing corporate training, because people have calls that they have to make, they have emails that they have to send, they have meetings that they have to attend, and you probably have related in your own life. And often people will send a few emails, then go to a meeting, then then make a call, whatever. And block time means you try to, as much as you can, you say, okay, 9 o'clock, I'm going to answer my emails for a half hour. And you don't think about anything else. And if you get a text message, you ignore it, just, okay, half hour, right? And if you have meetings, you try to put them all in a row, instead of one at 9, one at 10, one at 3, You do them one after another, and so that's the idea of block time. It can really help because you lose so much when you quickly go between tasks. You know, it says it's 40%. It takes I can't remember. It takes 6 or 7 minutes sometimes to go to the level of productivity you were at when you got distracted by something else. Yeah. And that's kind of also addressing your point. You can be actually more productive when you're stuck. So blocking time is actually really powerful. Apps that take you offline for a time,